In this video, we're going to do a physical deep dive on this IBM RS 6000 Unix machine from 1997. We'll see what the hardware is all about, learn a bit about its history, and finally try powering it up. It doesn't have any hard drives inside at the moment, so we may, or may not, figure out that situation. Let's get into it. This massive machine is an IBM RS 6000 Unix workstation from 1997. Specifically, an RS 6000 F40. IBM like to throw a slash in a lot of their names, which I have always found really fascinating and compelling for some reason. Makes the item in question sound very professional, I think. Anyway, with this RS 6000, I feel I have inched ever closer to a mainframe down here. RS 6000 is short for RISC System 6000. RISC standing for Reduced Instruction Set Computer. CPUs run what are called instructions, and RISC has a reduced amount of them compared to something like, say, an Intel 86 processor, like this Pentium 3 right here. The trade-off is that things are simpler and can actually perform faster overall. There are a lot of RISC processors you've probably heard of. Sun's Spark CPUs used in their workstations and servers for many years, or even the ARM processors used in some Raspberry Pis. This particular RS 6000 is sporting a single PowerPC 604E 166 MHz processor. We'll take a look at that when we open the case up. And yes, the PowerPC is the same line used by Apple machines until the mid-2000s, like this Power Mac G4 right here. There's a PowerPC sitting right here. But this isn't a CPU overview video. I just wanted to point out that this isn't some x86 processor sitting in here. It's a RISC PowerPC processor, so we're not just going to be throwing Windows 98 on it. Though it is my understanding there is a PowerPC version of Windows NT that maybe theoretically could run on here. No, we'll be trying to get AIX running on this bad boy, IBM's Unix variant, and that is almost certainly what would have been running on here in 1997. And in fact, one of my favorite pictures on Wikipedia of all time features some AIX RS 6000 servers, quote, running IBM.com in early 1998. And that brings me to the next reason I wanted one of these things. It's actually the predecessor to the IBM P series of enterprise servers that longtime viewers will know I absolutely love. I've got plenty of videos taking a look at some mid-2000s P5 machines from a hardware, software, and remote management perspective, and there will certainly be more coverage of those in the future. In fact, it'd be really cool to figure out how to throw this guy in the mix with those other P5 servers I've got running. So if anyone has any ideas for some era-appropriate enterprisey stuff I could do with these three, let me know. And I'm pretty excited to dive into this and see if it's got any similarities. You can see the heritage in the P5 machines. But to kick us off, let's have a look around this over 100-pound monster, and we'll start with the front. So I'll give you the whole front view once again. This thing just screams like Blade Runner or large air conditioner on top of a building. I love it. I'm not actually being facetious. I think it looks great. I love the PowerPC logo there. I love how they made the IBM RS 6000 badge look. Very nice. And once again, I have to stress how big this thing is. It is comically large, really heavy, probably about 100 pounds, and it doesn't even have hard drives. We'll get to that. Just an absolute unit. In the sort of top third portion, we have a door that slides open like that, and we have access to a tape drive. I have the door and some springs and little bits of plastic. We'll try to fix that, I think. I think this is original with the unit. We've got a CD-ROM drive, 3¼ inch floppy. I actually have microphone and headphone out, so this was meant to be a workstation, you know, at your desk. I'm pretty interested to hear how loud it is. It can't be that quiet. Look at the thing. This power button matches the rest of the line, and there were a lot of variants. Very classic IBM. Tons of different iterations of this, and again, this is what's called an F40 or also a 7025 in true IBM fashion. As P-series enthusiasts will know, there's 3 names for everything. I think we've got a reset button right here. Got a power on LED that of course you can't see when this is closed. There's some LEDs behind the screen that we'll take a look at. One of them must be power that shines through and hits this light tube here and shines through, so that should be pretty cool looking. This alarmingly just kind of comes off. So if you have this fascia off and you twist it sideways, the whole thing sideways, it's so easy to drop this. I cannot believe I haven't broken these very delicate pieces of plastic yet. A lot of plastic is broken on this bad boy, as we will go over in excruciating detail, but I'm proud to say this one is still fully intact. So I'll show you that again so we can give you the lay of the land here. This just falls into some plastic slots and does actually clip in. So we'll take that off, and then this entire faceplate is going to come off. There would have been at one point some clips under here to hold this part on, but you can see mine have broken probably decades ago. And then back up towards the top, there's two critical pieces holding it in. We've got this little flip up here that releases pressure on a rubber, I don't know, disc. I'll show you. And then I have the key. If you're looking at one of these and you're going to pick one up, it would be pretty annoying not to have the key, because it actually locks the faceplate to the actual machine. So you'd have to drill that out or find another key. That would suck. It's a little nerve-wracking to get this off. So you can see it's coming loose, but it wants to hold on up here. And it's okay. You just kind of got to be tough with it, unfortunately. And there we go. On the bottom here, you can see the totally busted plastic clips. So the normal procedure there would have been it hinging like that and then pulling off the clips, but they're gone. And here is why I had to wrench so hard to get it out. There's these metal nubs with sort of a ball shape at the end. This is a pretty typical design pattern on this machine. That ball slides into some metal slots right here that grab it, and it takes quite a bit of pressure to pull it out of that friction that the metal plates are grabbing the ball around there. And I told you this would be a deep dive, so hope you're ready. Here is that clip that was on the left that I unlatched, and you can see as I pull it down, it tightens around a rubber O-ring, I guess we'll call it, and that expands into a slot and holds that side of the case on. So you can see if I let it go, this whole assembly is thinner, and it's not going to last much longer, unfortunately. As you can see, the rubber is splitting. It works for now, but there's only so many more of these left in that thing's life. It slots into this hole, and when that rubber ring compresses on the other side, it won't come out, obviously, until you unlatch it. To be an IBM engineer in the 90s. Moving on, at the top, we've got this sort of indicator screen here for the machine and some LEDs, and I believe only this one shines through when the case is on. And the only known damage to this machine should be functional and working despite not having hard drives, we'll go over that later, is this busted LED right here. Before we turn it on, I will desolder that, and I think it will run without it, and then I'll find a replacement. I have never turned this machine on. In fact, at this point, I guess I'll tell you where this thing came from. I bought this from Winman 386, drove over to Kansas, and picked up a huge lot of stuff. He gave me a pretty good deal on a ton of stuff. Got a video of that over on my Patreon, but it's my understanding that this came from a farmer's co-op. He saved it from the dumpster, and here it is in my basement over in Colorado. Probably not going to do a lot of farmer co-op stuff on this anymore. We've got what is a handle to move it around with. More on that later. It requires wheels and a special base. That'll be a whole other section of the video. It looks like the faceplate on my tape drive is falling off. That's great. Uh-oh. I guess it's as good a time as any. This stuff just kind of falls out, just kind of comes out. I haven't been able to figure out how to clip it in. It looks like the floppy drive is pretty clipped in. It doesn't want to come out. There is, of course, a proprietary rail system. So it's bolted to the bottom of the CD-ROM drive, and it produces a rail system like this on the side that should be clipping in to these guides right here. And like I was saying, the floppy drive doesn't want to move. It's on some big bracket here, and it's clipping in just fine. So I think maybe the little leaf spring deals on the drive sled are just tired. Yeah, I think they're kind of worn out. I could probably bend them and make them a little more effective. I don't know if I'm going to worry about it. It's not like I'm jostling this thing around. Slightly more alarming is my tape drive actively falling apart in front of me. So let's slide this out. Yikes. Yeah, this is not good. I gotta figure out where this went. It was kind of floating around in here. Ugh. So I think this just recently happened. This warranty seal Well, that one's not broken, but this one is, so I suppose maybe it wasn't me just now. Ooh, what a disaster. So of course you have this ribbon cable that just came out. That's fine, I didn't break it. This ribbon cable for the front screen. So that's okay. That gives me time to put this all back together. And again, you can see the door's missing. So I have theoretically all the pieces. Not that the door really matters. More pieces just keep falling out of this thing. So I know it seems like I'm just busting it up, but it was already broken. He warned me about that when I bought it, that the tape drive is in pretty sad shape. So I mean, I'm really gentle with this machine, despite it being nearly impossible to move. And yeah, this tape drive has just seen better days. We will do our best, though. I will say, it's like kind of tactile buttons. Very 90s. Gives me a chance to show you this rail system, though. So I think it's supposed to just slot in and follow those guides. And yeah, I'm just almost positive the little leaf spring things, they're just worn out. That's not a big deal for my use case here. I do want the CD-ROM drive to work, though. That's how we're going to install Unix. Now let's address the elephant in the room here. The lower 2/3 is a gaping chasm of drive storage, and none of it's populated. I haven't looked into how IBM was marketing this machine as of yet, but it is pretty interesting that like each of these bays, I just counted, each of these bays holds 6 drives, and this was, I think, just a workstation, but clearly you don't need all that for a workstation. So you were meant to run probably like your small to medium business on one of these things back in the day. That's the only reason you'd need all that hard drive space. And down in here lies the problem. That is not a SCSI connector. That, however, is the symbol for the German Autobahn, I think. Must have been real fast. That backplane is SSA, or Serial Storage Architecture, which to IBM's credit, they did push as an open standard, but I think effectively it's proprietary because I don't know that a lot of people ever pursued it besides IBM, and it was eclipsed by Fibre Channel. The irony in my case is that it's basically just SCSI, as I understand it, and when we open this bad boy up, it's just SCSI everywhere. Tons of SCSI controllers. And they're connected to this backplane. So you just got to deal with this weird physical interface, essentially. Nothing a expensive trip to eBay can't solve, right? Right? This is the box I keep my P-Series and RS6000 related hard drive stuff inside. Let's have a look. That's later P-Series drive sleds on the right. That's a whole nother topic. About as frustrating as these. Here are some RS6000 SCSI to SSA adapters. And they're not what I thought they were. On the back, we've got that SSA connector that'll match up with the back plane. I actually haven't slid one of these in. We'll try that in a second. And then on the other side, we've got a Molex power adapter. That must come through SSA. We got whatever this is. I don't know what that is. And then the disappointment. This is SCSI 2, I think. So it is SCSI. It's not the right SCSI. I've got plenty of these SCSI 3, Ultra SCSI drives, that style. Connector, IBM branded, Sun branded. I think Fujitsu made these anyway. I don't have any of this older SCSI 2 connector style drive. I thought I was buying SCSI 3. Not what I got. So they do exist, these SCSI 3 adapters to SSA, and here we are. Ideally, I find the right tray with the right SSA to SCSI adapter, but we can get kind of janky with it, I guess. You know, throw one of these bad boys in here. SCSI is backwards compatible, mostly, so it's kind of one of the beauties of it. So, you know, what could possibly go wrong? This will be the last resort. A couple other tricks I think I'll come up with as we explore the machine, figure out the hard drive situation. But yeah, I've got like basically 8 or 10 or something of these adapters I can't really use, and they're not cheap. I would encourage you, go look up the price on eBay. But will it even work? I suppose that's the question. These are definitely from some like other IBM line. The blue does not match the rest of at least this one, this particular machine's aesthetic. So I'm just pushing the tray into its SSA slot there, and you can lock it in. They are correct. It's interesting, they each have some sort of reset button. We'll have to look that up in the manual. That's fascinating. So they lock in, you can unlock them, and then pull them out. So yeah, they're the right trays physically. I just don't have the right hard drives for them. I threw a few more in just to make myself feel better about buying them all. And they don't like to lock, so I think they kind of wear out. These two are the only ones that the lock mechanism wants to stay down, so that's frustrating because these have probably been pulled in and out of a machine like 4 times ever. But I watched a YouTube video or two about some RS6000s, and this seems to be the color scheme and look of these drive trays. So I don't know where this blue came from. It's different from this other IBM blue, which is in other machines I own that are much newer. Obviously this color here is the same. Again, we're deep diving. So more than you ever wanted to know physically about an RS6000. Yep, wish I had some drives to put in this. Moving on, this whole right side of the case hinges towards the back, and you can actually get access to the entire inside. Again, it's got those same metal things. The one on the bottom you can see comes out super easy, and the one on the top really does not, and it's, again, kind of scary. This plastic isn't going to cut it. I promise you this metal screwdriver is not damaging this particular machine. So check this out. We're in. Where to even start? Massive power supplies down here with, of course, totally bespoke cabling. This is not a PC. It's jammed in here, but pretty tidy. All the cabling coming to the front. These are all the hard drive backplanes, you know, the things with the German Autobahn symbol on them. This is, I believe, a very large SCSI controller. And these cables here go to those backplanes. And right here, you can see an unused connector with a much more familiar looking SCSI interface. We've got RAM down here. I'm not sure how much is in this thing. We'll have to figure that out. This is our CPU, the PowerPC. We can have 2 of them, so I might need to hunt down 2, just, you know, because. And this motherboard is absolutely massive. It is something like 18 imperial inches tall. I'm gonna go read the manual for a while, so I'm not telling any lies, but I'm pretty sure this is a PCI variant. Like I was saying earlier, there are tons of different variations of these RS6000 machines, and I think they made some micro-channel variants when IBM was trying to compete with ISA, the industry standard architecture that IBM invented and Compaq was pushing. Pretty sure we've got PCI slots here. We've got 2 ISA slots. That could be fun. And then 1 used to be populated. You saw the SCSI card above. We'll pull that out. And down in here is another SCSI connector. So the main board itself must have its own SCSI controller where you can plug in SCSI peripherals. But I can tell you one thing for sure that enticed me about buying this. That's a video card. We might be doing some gaming. Good news, I was reading the manual, and I don't think I've told any egregious lies yet. IBM is pretty good about documenting all their stuff, giving every slot and every item a unique code that you can reference in their manuals. And sure enough, ISA slots up here, 2 of them. These are 32-bit PCI. And right in here, here's that SCSI controller. And there are actually 2 64-bit PCI slots. This is a pretty impressive machine. And then way down in here, some folks might have noticed in earlier shots this AGP looking thing. That's old J42. That would have been for something called a service processor. I think it could like remotely monitor voltages and stuff like that. Sort of some like a very dumbed down remote management is my understanding. You'd plug that card in there, which is always fascinating. And I'm pretty sure this plastic piece right here that we're seeing would have been a guide for the card as it slotted in to that service processor slot. Don't worry. I'm going to get this mouse house out of here. We will pull the SCSI card and the video card, dust them off, have a look. But in the meantime, let's continue the physical walk around and look at the back. As I continue to dive into this thing, glorious is just the only way I can describe it. This thing is massive. We'll start at the top third. Here's that open ISA slot that was being used. Then we had a bunch of 32-bit PCI, and one of these is an ISA slot. We've got this interesting asset management tag, I would guess it is. A very quick Google, I mean like 4 seconds. I can't find what this is, so that's pretty interesting. Let me know if you recognize this. I have to assume it's like an IT management company from back in the day. Let me know. The lower 2/3, we've got the VGA port because we have a video card. That'll be fun. And we've got another SCSI connector. This is what I was kind of alluding to. I think I'll be able to maybe hook this up to like a Sun drive array I've got. So I don't think this thing will care. The trick is if I can get it to boot off this port. A little further down, we've got two serial ports. IBM used this icon for serial for a long time. It's definitely on the P5 machines I've got. It might even be on some Think Centers I've got. Oh yeah, sure enough, here we've got a early 2000s Pentium 4 Think Center from IBM. Look at this size comparison, by the way. And IBM was using that same icon for the serial port. And then of course a parallel port for printing, and IBM denotes that with a little printer symbol. It came with this Centronics label. Centronics was a printer manufacturer that went out well before, like a decade before this thing was built. So probably it was hooked up to a Centronics printer. That's sort of interesting. Over here, you see they hid some labels on the right side of the panel here. We've got audio in and out. We've got a mouse, PS2, keyboard, PS2 connector. And this is what the manual calls a tablet connector. So my best guess is this was used for like AutoCAD, like computer aided design type work. That probably would have been a pretty heavy hitter on these things. I'm guessing IBM made some sort of, I don't know, drawing tablet type thing with this connector here. Let me know if you ever used these things for work back in the day. And just below that, we get into the networking interfaces. So up here, we've got an AUI, attachment unit interface, and probably what all of us are more familiar with, just like an RJ45 Ethernet. They're both Ethernet, just different physical interfaces. Into this AUI interface, you'd plug one of these in. These are called MAUs, MAUs, or medium attachment units, and they take that AUI interface and turn it into the RJ45 we all know and love. Here's something interesting. Throughout my travels, I've collected 3 of these MAUs. 2 of them are these Centercom 210Ts. They look like this. They perform the exact same function, as far as I can tell, as this Centercom 210TS, but they have different literal physical shapes. They do the same thing. There's nothing different. They take an AUI and they turn it into RJ45 10BASE-T Ethernet. But check this out. If I try to take the 210T, the one I had 2 of, and try to plug it in, it's just not really physically going to work. You can see this portion is just too wide. It's butting up against the case. It's got this pretty severe angle. Maybe all these pins are making connection, but like I kind of highly doubt it. If, however, we ditch this 210T and switch over to the 210TS and throw that in, the bulkier part goes that way, clears the case, fits perfectly, won't be an issue. For comparison, here's the other one in the same orientation, and yeah, it's not gonna fit. I've always wondered why this one was just physically different, and it's clearly to fit in different machines. I don't know if this one was just for IBM or whatever, but this one, the 210T, isn't gonna work in this machine. So we'll have to try this one out. Just below that, we've got a SCSI connector for the internal controller on the motherboard. In fact, we'll probably hook something up to this one and hopefully we can boot off of it. Earlier I said there was multiple power supplies. There's just this one big one at the bottom, and it runs almost the entire length of the chassis up to that back plane with the drives. And here we can see we're a Type 7025, just like it said on the front, and 110 pounds or 50 kilograms. I knew it. The manual didn't mention how heavy it was, but this is probably 110 pounds even without the 18 drives in the front. Speaking of the weight, you've probably noticed it's on this base plate. These are 2 separate pieces. This is some pretty solid plastic, and this machine is sitting on top of it. The clips are totally broken, only a few work, but it basically clips in, and there would have been wheels on the back here. And if you remember the handle on the front, you'd tip that up and be able to wheel it around because it's so heavy. What I did is I taped the felt side of some Velcro to the bottom of this thing, and that's been allowing me to at least move it around a little bit without making a ton of noise and scraping everything up. They threw a little design at this tray. Here's the left side, kind of bows out like that. And on the right side, you just got these 2 feet kind of looking pieces. So we were looking in here for completeness. The other side doesn't open. It's all one solid piece of metal, and you only get through in the front and this door on the side. Well, let's get ready to fire this thing up. I'm going to take these 2 cards out so we can have a look at them, and we'll dust them off. Here is the graphics accelerator, and I'm pretty happy to have this because I don't think you can just throw any old video card in here. Only a few were supported officially. And then I'll unhook these SCSI connectors, hopefully without damaging anything. That's good. I think I'll label this. Probably doesn't really matter, but I'll put a mark for the right side there. I think all of this would work, but these cards collected a bunch of dust, and I think I'd like to knock that off before firing it up and heating everything up. Kind of hard to get out. Pretty typical of big machines like this, but there's some guides here, and the really long PCI or ISA cards would come with little clips to slot into there so the boards aren't flexing. Let's see what we've got here. IBM Corporation, copyright 1997, no surprise there. Some Adaptec chips, looks like. Some IBM branded chips here, and another PowerPC. Yeah, it looks like it says it's a PowerPC 403 GCX. This is pretty common. IBM liked to throw PowerPC chips on internal cards. Other than that, we had the SCSI connector on the side for external access. 3 of them internally we saw. And then this guy here, I don't know what it is. Maybe another SCSI connector or for expansion of some sort. Not sure. Quick look at the video card. This one's got a 1995 STB Systems Incorporated copyright S3 Trio 64V Plus chip on it. On the back, I looked up this IBM FRU part number, and this is what's called a GTX 110P graphics adapter. So I'll get the dust blown off these things, get them back in. I suppose we ought to have a look at the CPU. Let me see if I can get it out of here nicely. It's kind of like in a RAM slot style connector. Okay. Not much to see, I guess. I'm not going to take the heat sinks off, but there it is. Pretty cool. Oh, I looked up what this little button was on the drive trays, and it's a spin down button. So you would press it, it would let the drive spin down, and then it would remove power so you could pull it out safely and swap the drives, I suppose. The last thing to do before I can turn this on is deal with this LED. And so this whole display panel, I think, is going to slide out, yeah, and then we've got a ribbon cable on the back, looks like. Let's see if I can get that out without breaking it. Yep, here it is. Need to remove this broken LED here. It's hanging on for dear life. And it looks like that's not going to be too big of a deal, so I'll heat up the iron, maybe hit it with a little bit of extra solder, and then I'll clean it with the solder wick. That's done. Wasn't too bad. I'm pretty sure it won't be a problem not having one in there. But if it proves to be an issue, I'll just slap in any old LED I've got. That being said, I can't quite tell, but one of them might have taken the pad with it when it was crunched. We'll see. Actually, one more last thing before we power it on. None of this stuff's hooked up. And this is actually a SCSI CD-ROM. Check this out. Big old SCSI connector on the back there. Let's get this stuff hooked up. glad I got in here. Someone was doing a little modding. We just got a 12 volt just floating around. That's not good. Fix that up. What's going on with this? Oh, I see. They had fallen out of the floppy drive power connector. It's been wrenched around and oh yeah, the other ground just fell out. You can repin these, but I think what I'm going to do is just tape these off, and I'll just throw a new one on there to be safe. Okay, I've got the CD-ROM and the floppy drive all hooked back up. Put some electrical tape on that little bit that was flinging around. I'm not one to really worry about pulling cards and thoroughly cleaning a machine before I start it up, but it always pays to just have a quick look inside. That wire scraping against the case like this, depending on how resilient that power supply is, could have been pretty catastrophic, so I'm glad we caught that. Also, for how much space this machine has, dealing with this section sucks. It's like very cramped. You have to pull things in and out, and there's like barely enough space for everything to fit. Kind of weird that you have this massive chassis and then you cram all your wires here for your peripherals. I plugged it in without realizing the power cable I was using was plugged into the wall on the other end. So we're committed now. I heard a very high-pitched whine coming from what sounded like the power supply for a little bit. That went away after about 10 seconds. We've got this light blinking here. This one blinks at the same cadence, and this one is solid. Got a keyboard and mouse hooked up, got the VGA from the graphics adapter going to this monitor here. The manual says you can also use serial port 1 to remotely administer this thing, so I've got that hooked up just in case, and I think we're gonna let it rip. Get the power button here, let's see how loud it is. Quiet as a mouse. The lights on all these trays come on, which is pretty nice. Nothing on the monitor. This is dead. Now it's beeping at me. I take that back. It's rolling through its progress codes. The P-series machines do this as well. I see it's blinking the floppy. Hopefully this means it's progressing. Oh, look at this. Hopefully you heard that. It's got an internal speaker and plays some sounds. Oh, this is so cool. Starting software. So obviously it's got some firmware on it. There is no hard drive or anything. This is so cool. I'm just gonna let it do its thing and see what it thinks about not having a hard drive. Nothing over the serial console. So it's got this boot PS equals, and it's on step, I guess maybe that means step 9. It started at 1, of course, and it's just been kind of counting up, and I assume it's eventually going to get to the point where it can't boot to AIX. Oh yeah, it's getting unhappy about stuff. Got some warning symbol and an error code, 28800004. Dug into IBM's very good documentation on this machine, and that error code eventually brings you to this table of problems, and it is failing establishing host connection. Basically what's happening is this thing is trying to boot off the floppy, the SCSI, can't find a hard disk, and eventually it goes and tries to boot over the network, and it's not on the network. So this makes perfect sense. What we're going to want to do is get into the SMS menu, the System Management Services menu. I think you do that with a special keyboard shortcut, so restart the machine and see if we can get there. I just reset the machine. We're going to hear one post beep, and then we should see a display that shows, there's the beep, that shows the keyboard. And before it makes a little chime, we need to hit F1. I just hit F1. Yes, here we are. The Graphical System Management Services. Bold font choice from the team at IBM. Look at me with a kind of half okay VGA capture setup. Let's look around. Take a look at config. Kind of slow. That finally loaded. Looks like we've got 512 megs of RAM for 128 meg sticks. That's good. Sees everything I think it should be seeing. Excellent. Let's look at the boot order. Okay, so this one's been configured to boot from the SCSI drive, then the floppy drive, and then over the network. Utilities. All sorts of stuff. Error log. SCSI ID stuff. Very cool. You can update it. I think this would take you to the open firmware console if you wanted to. Let's look at the error log. Some interesting dates on those. Okay. Here's the plan. Let's see if we can't get a hard drive in this thing. I've got this SCSI 2 to SCSI 3 adapter board. I've never had any luck with these, so I'm not really holding my breath, but we're going to try it. And the problem is, its Molex adapter port is on the opposite side from where this one comes in from the SSA board, and it won't reach, but that's okay. I'm just going to take this other one, sort of snake it in to the drive bay. I think you know where I'm going with this. It's all hooked up. There's really not enough room for that adapter to be in there, but you know, we got all sorts of room. So we'll, you know, that's perfect. Just how the IBM engineers designed it. First of all, I don't think that adapter plate's gonna work. I've never had any luck, like I was saying. I also don't know if you need to be in a particular slot. We'll see. I just want to see if it recognizes the drive. The drive light's on. I can hear it spinning up. Yeah. We're back here. I highly doubt anything's going to change. Yeah, it doesn't see any hard disks as far as I could tell. Not too surprising. Let's get AIX on there and try to boot from an AIX installer, see if that can see any hard disks. As always, shipped to me right from IBM. AIX 432. Let's see if our SCSI drive works. It's got the little tabs that you push up to hold the disk in there. I'll put this in and we will reboot. This is obviously diminishing returns here. I just want to see if we can recognize the drive. It sees it. It's getting curious about it. After a few minutes, you can hear the drive spinning a while. This screen just goes gray. So there's an output, but it's just a solid gray, which is alarming. However, the serial console comes to life. Let's see, it says type 1 and enter to use this as the terminal. That worked. You can hear the disk spinning. Got a little spinner indicator on the bottom left there. Okay, type 1 and press enter for English. Yeah, there are no disks available on this system. Not surprised by that at all. Okay, I think that's enough of that. It would have been funny if that had worked, but obviously that's not the permanent setup I want. A bunch of stuff could be going wrong. This adapter could be the issue, probably is. This drive could be low-level formatted in a way that AIX doesn't like. I've encountered that a bunch of different times with other drives, and maybe I just need to get it in the right slot on this thing. I don't know. Well, what's next for this thing? Obviously, the hard drive situation. I had joked about putting this sun array on there for comedy, I guess, but really that's just not how I'm going to want to run this thing. I want to be able to turn it on and have an internal hard drive just working. Maybe I can figure out where to like mount a SCSI drive internally to this case and not even deal with this SSA stuff. Not sure. Once we get the hard drive situation sorted, we can get AIX on there. I'm really glad the SCSI drive works, the SCSI CD-ROM, and obviously I didn't come back to the tape drive. That's going to need a lot of repair. I need to buy some tapes for it, and that'll only be useful once we have AIX and we can actually kind of see if it works. I like this machine a lot more than I thought I would. It's really fun to play with. It has that cutesy little chime when it starts up, the graphical user interface in the firmware. Really, really interesting machine. You'll definitely be seeing this thing in the future and we'll get it working and fully functional. It's my understanding that you can even compile some games for the PowerPC that IBM is still hosting on their website. I hope you enjoyed following along this mostly physical deep dive of this RS6000 F40. Absolutely fascinating line of machines. I love that they are the predecessors to the P5 machines I like to play around with, and I'm really satisfied that this thing appears to be fully functional. Thanks for following along. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'm running out of time. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.